Welcome to the Influential Personal Brand Podcast. This is the place where we help mission-driven messengers just like you learn how to build and monetize your personal brand. My name is Rory Vaden, and I'm the co-founder of Brand Builders Group, a Hall of Fame speaker, and New York Times bestselling author. And this show is to help experts learn how to become more wealthy and well-known. I know you're going to love it. Thanks for being here. Let's get started. Anytime we can talk about money and financial freedom and being more rich and abundant and helping you grow your business, it is a powerful conversation. And today is especially going to be that because we have my good friend, Mel Abraham, on the show. Mel and I have known each other for several years now, and he is one of the most genuine, amazing, nice individuals that I've ever met. And everybody who knows him in real life will say the same thing. By trade, though, he is a CPA, and he is a deep, deep expert on the subject of all things money. He is a globally recognized thought leader. He shares the stage with 400 Fortune 500 companies. He speaks at some of the biggest public events in the world. He is friends with a lot of the most influential people in this space, and he understands online business, understands offline business. He's also a cancer survivor, which was something that he endured like in and around the pandemic, and went through some of his own financial, kind of issues dealing with that. And he's just an amazing, amazing, genuine human. So he understands our space, and he understands specifically, he's an expert in finance and all things money. So without further ado, Mel, welcome to the show, buddy.
Rory, it is so good to be here. Thank you for having me, man.
Man, I'm so excited about your new book. So, Build Your Money Machine, which I love the title, Build Your Money Machine. This book is fantastic. It has diagrams and tools and charts and tables. You do such a brilliant job of making it clear and simple, just helping people understand money. So I'm excited to talk to you. I wanted to ask you, where did your whole journey start? Like, how did you get into money, and like, what happened early? I know you talk in the book a little bit about some of your earliest like money memories and how that impacted you and has really like set the trajectory of your life. So I'd love to hear that.
Oh my God, thank you. So yeah, I look. Most of our money lessons are caught, not taught, and I was no different. I remember one of my earliest money lessons was seeing my dad cry for the first time. Now I'm a son of an immigrant family. My dad came here at 17 years old with nothing. He came here to go to school, and he fought to get here and built a life. He was an engineer, aerospace engineer. But in my life, I looked at him as this tower of power and everything. And here he was in tears for the first time that I'd ever seen him in tears. And I didn't know the specifics. I just knew it had to do with money.
Mm.
It was my mom and him having a conversation. And I hear my dad say, I just feel like I'm letting down and disappointing the people I love. And and that hit me, and I didn't realize how much it hit me, but I ended up carrying this idea that if I don't make enough money, you're going to disappoint the people you love.
Mm.
And it became this chase for me. The challenge was, obviously I was wrong. and that got presented to me by a 6-year-old. Fast forward, I'm a single full-time dad building my businesses as an entrepreneur, doing the things that I'm doing. And I did the typical thing. I got on the treadmill and started running the miles. I was building an expert brand at that point in time. And I was getting money and I was getting clients. Things were going well. And Jeremy at 6 years old comes running in and says, Daddy, I drew a picture of you at school today. And so I kneel down to grab this picture and look at it. And there I am in blue felt tip pen, a stick figure with 2 computer screens and a phone in each ear and the one on the desk ringing. And that was a mirror into my soul. He in a moment looked at me and said, Dad, You may want the profits because it pays the bills, but I don't want the profits. I just want your presence. And it was in that moment where I kind of looked at things and said, how is it, and is it possible for the dream to be an entrepreneur, the dream to build and impact lives, to coexist with the gift of being a parent, being a dad? Because I knew that no matter what my financial success was, if I screwed up and messed up the parenting part, then I failed. I failed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what kind of gave birth to this obsession, if you will. Now he's 34 years old now, so it's been decades. Um, but this obsession to say, how is it? How can we do this? Because I think that the ultimate purchase we need to make in our lives is freedom. It's not stuff. And that's why we need the wealth. And that's where money came in. I knew that I had to separate the ability to earn from the efforts to earn it if I wanted to be free.
Yeah, I love that. Well, so let's talk about that specifically in the context of entrepreneurs, because there's a part of being an entrepreneur that is like, when I think of it financially, there's like these different buckets, right? So first of all, it's like I have to make a lot of money. Like I have to generate revenue. That's an important part of being an entrepreneur. Then there is, I have to manage expenses and I need to not spend more than I'm making. Um, then there is whatever past I had, like the debt I came in with to being an entrepreneur in the first place. And so I have to like resolve that. But then it's like I also have to plan for the future, right? For like retirement. And then I have like my personal finances. So if I just think about like the business is, okay, we got to make money. We have to spend money wisely. We have to pay off debt that exists. We have to plan for the future. And then we have to like pay our expenses now. And like, it is freaking hard. Like just even saying that out loud is overwhelming. It's going like, yeah, I do feel like I need to get back to work. Like to do those 5 things really well is incredibly difficult. And then you go, how do I do that in some reasonable amount of hours inside of a week where I can still be a present dad and, mom and um, friend and not work all the time? Because it's scary going, how the heck am I going to do those 5 things? So where do you think is most often the first place to focus? So like you look at those buckets, there's making money, there's spending money wisely, um, there's paying off the past, planning for the future, and then like, managing our personal lives. If that's sort of overwhelming to me, where do I start first? Or just, in those various areas, what are some things that we can do to kind of get more
Yeah.
control financially?
So before we get there, I think the first thing that we want to make sure we have clarity on is our direction. And that's why everything I think starts with life. What is that life vision? What do we want for the business? What do we, are we trying to, like, I look at the stage of I'm at, my desire is to impact people as much as possible and have as much reach. My desire isn't to build this huge organization. And so we need to be clear that we're running our race first, because
Mm.
the tendency, and I watched a dear friend of mine start hiring a bunch of people because everyone else around him was hiring a bunch of people and he felt it was the thing to do. He was miserable until he skinnied it back down to a small team to do the things that he really wanted to do. And so I think the very first thing, whether it's in the personal or the business, is to ask ourselves, what's my race look like? What's my finish line look like? Where am I trying to go? And why am I trying to get there?
Mm.
Because then we allow that. So that will inform the plan. The vision will inform the plan. The plan will determine the strategy. The strategy will dictate the tactics. And then
That's
from
so
there, we,
good. That's so good too, because like if you don't do that, you literally you scroll on social media and you see Lamborghinis and Ferraris and private jets, and you're like, oh, my whole life needs to be about this. And then one day you wake up, you go, I don't even care about that crap. Like, I don't want
Mhm.
5 houses. 5 houses sounds like a freaking nightmare to me. Like,
It
all the
does.
mowing 5 yards and cleaning, having 5, even if you're not doing any of it, it's like managing the contractors is like, what a nightmare. But yet, if you don't do this deliberately, you get like
Mhm.
swallowed up into this current, like this mainstream current of like more is better, bigger is
Yeah.
better, nicer house, nicer car, bigger, nicer vacation, and you're like consumed chasing something you literally don't even want.
It's so true. Patrick Bet-David, I saw an interview with him, and he made a comment. He said, when we were growing up, and he grew up not far from where I grew up, and he says, when we were growing up, we would see a kid with a new bike, and that became our comparison set, where we're looking at new bike. I kind of want the new bike, but now because of social media, the comparison set is the Kardashians' new jet,
Yeah.
and starts to create this need, this desire, and that's the definition of success. But the reality is that your definition of success might be a tent in Montana, and that's okay as long as it's of your own hands, of your own doing. I think that's one of the biggest lessons that came out of the drawing that Jeremy made, was because I had so many people saying, Mel, you have to get work-life balance. But balance is a myth. This idea of a weight on one side, a counterweight on the other side, playing tug of war, and on average you're balanced. And it's like, what we really needed was harmony, and harmony comes from intent. And I think when we become intentional with our life, with our time and our money, now we can direct it in a focused way to achieve the things that we're trying to achieve. But too often we're diluted in our focus because we're getting barraged with all these messages, and we haven't taken the time to define really what our lane is and what our
So
race is going to look like.
when you define it, like what does that mean? Does it mean like I need to say exactly how much money I want to retire with? I need to describe exactly the kind of house I want to live in, how many cars I want to have, what kind of college I want to send my kids to if I want to send them to college. Like, what are the elements of going,
Yeah.
this is what it means to be clear on the race that you're running?
Yeah. So I look at it and I say we're going to look at all the domains of life. So we're not just going to because it's how we want to live our life that matters, and then we put the price tag on it. So relationships, what do we want our relationships to be like? What do we want our family to look like? Where do we want to live? What does our career look like? What is our health? So we define that and say, okay, what does it take to get there? Now, let's just be really clear. We can get as specific as we want, but we're not going to be exact, because if I had that kind of crystal ball, then I'd be in a totally different business. I don't have that crystal ball. So I look at things and say, where do I want to be in a decade? Let's just use a decade to start, because then a decade I can break to a 5-year milestone, to a 1-year milestone, to 90-day increments, to action steps and projects. And it allows me to look at things through those eyes, knowing that life's going to change. When my son was born, life changed. When I met my wife, life changed and things changed, and we have to revisit it. When my granddaughters were born, things changed. When I got cancer, things changed. So what we're doing is setting a trajectory for a horizon to get us going the right direction and give us the boundaries that we want to operate within. And then as we start to live our life and we get closer to that time, we'll refine it. And a lot of that refinement is realizing I actually don't like that, so I'm going to put it away and I'm going to just focus on this. Like you said, I I don't own a ton of real estate directly, and part of it is I don't want that lifestyle. The thought of having a bunch of properties and to manage it, even with a management company, just stresses the hell out of me. I don't want it. And so we tend to not do that. So the first thing is this is let's just figure out an idea of where we're going. Let's put a price tag, an estimated price tag on it, so we have something to go towards. Because the risk is if we don't do that, we have no idea what the finish line is, and we don't know how close we are, how far we are, and we have nothing to judge. So I just want to have something there, and every year, Every couple years, you're going to revisit it and get more precise. Then we can look at it and say, okay, great. Now I have an idea of where I'm going. Let's look at where I really am. Because once I have those 2 points, my current reality, my desired future, we know the gap in between. Now we know the work we have to do. But we have to be real with ourselves. If I'm in a hole and digging deeper because I keep going in debt, living beyond my means and doing that, well, the first thing, the first priority for that person is stop digging. We're not getting out of the hole by digging further. So we have to stop digging. And that could be, let's examine the expenses. Let's figure out where the money's going, why it's going out, be real critical on what we're doing. It could be that we look to the other side of the equation. Hey, you're not making enough. We got to get a bigger shovel. We got to get more income. And I think one of the biggest things, especially in a personal brand type of environment, is to ask ourselves, do I actually value myself? Do I actually own the value with conviction that I bring to the table? And am I getting paid for it? Because that we grew up in the industrial age, thinking of time clocks and timesheets and hourly rates and billable hours and all that stuff, commoditize everything and cheapens it. And that's the risk we create when we start to think in terms of a math equation, especially if we're talking about expertise and personal brands and that kind of thing, that we have to get away from that math equation. So
So how would you price it instead of that, right? Like, how would you think of it instead of using like the math equation? And is there a different way to think about it?
I look at, so part of it is looking at the value of the solutions you create. So for instance, in my world, what I originally started doing was I was a CPA, I'm still a CPA. I was valuing businesses to buy and sell, but I was also valuing businesses for purposes to fight, tax situations and litigation. Well, someone brings me in to do a valuation for an estate that's going to pay an estate tax at 40%. And I have the ability to create a value, to come up with a valuation that supports a reduction of that tax by $1 million. Me sending them a bill for $100,000 is a drop in the bucket. And so I look at it, I started to look at my business and say, I'm going to price it based on the solution that I'm providing more so than the hours it takes to do it. Now, in some cases, I got burned. In other cases, if you reduced it to an hourly rate, I got paid $10,000 an hour, But I'm trying to, because the other thing is, I think it's important for us to have the conversations with the potential clients and in the frame of value. We don't talk price without the context of value. It just doesn't play well. And in the risk, I had one of the top tax attorneys. He since passed away in Beverly Hills. He brought me in to meet with a client, have the conversation, see if I was going to be the one that they would hire, and then when the client says, "How much is this going to cost?" I hemmed and hawed, and I didn't, and I hesitated. And once the client left, the attorney Elliot looked at me. He says, "If you ever do that again, I'll never bring you another client." He says, "You need to understand that you have a specific set of skills and expertise that you bring to the table, and you have to own that. The reason you hemmed and hawed is because, one, you didn't own it. Two, you believe that it is your job to justify your price and your value to the client." He says, "No, it's your job to own your value, put it on the table, and sit there quietly, and it's the client's job to deal with it. And either they will or they won't. And leave it that way." And so all of my pricing, other than government contracts, which required an hourly rate that I did, all of my pricing was project pricing based upon what I saw the value of the solution was. And either they decided to hire me or they didn't. And I was okay with it.
Mm-hmm. And so it's not based on the time you're putting in, it's based on what the value is to them.
Yeah, and then, you know, and with, post cancer and all that stuff, you start to value time and your life. So I start looking at things and saying, how much of my life force is this going to take away from me? Do I really want to get on the plane? Do I really want to do that? Um, so I start to price things out, saying that makes it worthwhile for me. Now, is there a math equation behind it? Likely not. It's me sitting back saying, I'm okay. This is the value of what I can create for you, and I'm willing to own it.
What if it's not an empirical thing, right? Like it's one thing to go, I can save you X% on your taxes, or I can help you grow your revenue. Yeah, I can help you double your revenue. But what if it's more, I can help you save your marriage, or or like I can help you get in better shape. It's more I can restore your relationship with your
Yeah,
kids. I can, some of these like non empirical types of
yeah.
scenarios. Is there a way to still do that, do you think, or does it only work in certain environments?
It's harder to do it in there because it's not as easy to quantify in
Yeah.
that perspective. But I look at it and I go, the first doctor I went and saw for when they found the tumor was very flippant when we went in. He says, "Oh, it's my bread and butter," and he just kind of but he sat on the original CT scan for 11 days, and I thought, and now he says, "I need you in surgery right now," and I said, "How is it that now it's an emergency, but you sat on the CT scan for 11 days?" And so we made calls to different doctors, and this one doctor came up 3 times and called his office, sitting in the parking lot of the original doctor before we left. We called this doctor's office. He says, "We have an opening tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Do you want to come in?" And I said, "Yes." I didn't ask the price.
Hmm.
I didn't care. Now, I'm fortunately in a financial position to not worry about it. But But the solution was, because I looked at it and go, this could be the death of me. This could mean losing my life. And so I don't know how to put a price tag on that. And so I didn't ask the price. I didn't look at it from that perspective. I just said, give me the best and I'll figure out a way to make this work, because the pain of losing life, not being here to live with my wife and my kids and the grandkids and all that stuff, was too great. And so there was still a transactional analysis, even though it wasn't monetary. It was still something I looked at and said, I can't put a price on it other than the fact that I want to be here.
Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. So I want to change directions a little bit and talk
Yep,
about
yep, yep.
retirement for second, because I feel like retirement is a little bit tricky, because you go, the most powerful way to plan for retirement is to do it early when you don't have any money. Um, if you wait too long, though, it's like then you really need to do it because you're coming up on it. But it's like there's always this conundrum of, well, should I reinvest the money into the business? Should I put
Yeah.
it into retirement? Should I buy real estate? Should I buy crypto? Should I buy stocks? Should I do an IRA? Um, and especially when you're an entrepreneur, it's like, at least when you're building your company, at least if you're building your first company, it's like, there's not a lot of excess time to like sit around and learn all this stuff and be
Yeah.
like, yeah, let me manage 100 different investment ideas and learn all the strategies and like pay all the people to pull it off. It's like, for my business to work, typically I have to be all in on the business, and it's like having a baby, right? Especially the first
Yeah.
5 years, it's like it consumes all of your attention. So how should we as entrepreneurs be thinking about retirement? And are there any sort of retirement strategies specific to personal brands that you think that really lend themselves well to like experts, right? Speakers,
Yeah.
authors, coaches, financial advisors, accountants, doctors, lawyers, like professional service providers, people like that, direct sales, etc.
This is a really important question to look at and to answer. The first thing that I'd like everyone to understand is that wealth creation is a muscle group. It's a behavior. Our ability to build that wealth is more about our actions and behaviors than it is about our money. So I'm not as concerned at the beginning, especially when you're first starting out, with how much you're putting away. What I am concerned about is that we're getting into the habit of putting something away. So no matter who or where you are, I just want you to put a little bit away. And we'll talk about where in a moment. But I want you exercising the muscle. And so that's one piece of it. The second, and I hear this all the time with entrepreneurs saying, I can make more money if I just reinvest in my business than I can in the market or anything else, or diluting my focus in these other arenas. So I agree that may be the case, but you cannot look at what your returns are without looking at what your risk is. So if all I had was my business, and I'm speaking and I'm doing work and I'm doing all that, and then the doctor says, hey man, you got cancer, and I shut it down, which is what I did, I got nothing. The risk is way too great. So the reason that I want to carve a piece off to build something outside the business is, one, for you to have something in the future that isn't tied to the business or your efforts in the business, but two, to diversify the risk away. So if something happened where the business couldn't run or you couldn't run the business, you still had something else going on. And but we tend to just look at it and say, I can make more in the business by putting all my money back in the business. And the answer is yes, as long as you can run the business and it can continue to run. But if either one of those is not true, then you would have been better served to have a little bit put aside somewhere else to give you some cushion. And so that's the foundational just philosophy behind it. I also look at things and say, I want to build safety first, growth second. So my job is to keep people safe. The way you keep them safe is to have some diversification, but also keep simplicity in it. You know, you mentioned all kinds of things, crypto and real estate and all that stuff. And you're right. You're trying to run a business. You can't learn about all that other stuff. And if you don't have a passion for it, it's going to be hard to learn about it. So keep it simple. If all I had was $50,000, $10,000 to invest, you're not going to buy a piece of real estate. At least you shouldn't, because again, we come back to risk. I can buy one property. If I have a bad tenant, a tenant that doesn't pay, someone I have to evict, long-term vacancy, bad repairs, all those things, I can't carry it because I got into it and I don't have safety first, growth second. And so I tell people, when you first start out, let's just keep it easy. I want you to put it in a diversified ETF or index fund. Buy 500 companies, 3,000 companies. Make it easy. We know long-term, 94% of the time in over 10 years or more, that market's going to go up. We'll make 8 to 10% in it. You have diversification, you have liquidity, and you're in the game, and you're doing it simply. And if you're not sure what to go into, you go into either an S&P 500 fund, a total stock market index fund, or you just turn around and do something called a target date index fund. Say you don't need the money for 30 years, you pick a 2055 fund with Vanguard or something, and you just park it there and let it roll. There's not a lot of thought. There's not a lot of analysis. There isn't a lot of management. There isn't a lot of fees. There isn't a lot of expenses, but you're in the game and the money's starting to work for you. But it has to be long-term money to do it that way. And so,
you can park that inside of an IRA, right?
Yeah. So I was just going to go there. So you can park it inside of an IRA. Now, in the book, I talk about the wealth priority ladder, and I literally break down where you put each dollar depending on where you are in that ladder. And so one of the things that we might do is early on, if you're not making a lot of income, we might have you put it into a Roth IRA first. because that's going to grow 100% tax free forever. You know, so early on, I want to take the tax advantaged kinds of things, especially if I'm a low income bracket, low tax bracket. The tax deduction doesn't mean a lot this year. Put it in. I've got a kid, 16-and-a-half-year-old kid, who joined one of my programs. We had a conversation, 17 years old. He says, I got a job. What do? I said, open a Roth. I said, great. So 3 weeks ago, we're on a call, and he says, I funded my Roth. He says, I don't know how to invest it. What do I do? I said, how much do you fund it with? I said, you're still 17. He says, no, I just turned 18. So he's 18 years old. He funded a Roth. And so I'm thinking he's 18 years old. What did he put in it? $500? $1,000? And I said, how much you put in? He says, well, I fully funded 2023 and I already funded 2024. I go, hold on a second. You're 18. You're telling me you put 6,500 in for 2023 and 7,000 already for 2024? And he said, yeah. He says, it helps because I'm living at home. But here's what happens. If he just put it in an S&P 500 fund, let's just say it grows at 8%. It will go up 107 times before he ever is at retirement age. That means that he'll have $1.2 million or more without doing a thing. It's in a Roth. He put 13,000 in. He gets 1.2 million out. He never pays a dime in tax. And so at the very beginning, if I have low income and I'm eligible because there's income limits for Roths, I'm probably going to tell you to put it in a Roth. Take the tax advantage, have it tax-free down the road, then you're not worried about it. Then as the income grows and we have more income in the business, we might put a solo 401k in to get more, because the Roth is limited to $7,000 now. But if I put a solo 401k in, I can put 23,000. And if I put a profit sharing piece to it, I can put up to 69,000 or so in there, and more if I'm over age 50. So there is just like a recipe, you need to know the ingredients, the amount of the ingredients, and the timing in which to do it. So there is a hierarchy that I break down that literally says, if you're here, this is what you do. If you're here, this is what you do every step of the way, because every dollar that comes into our life must have a job description before we earn it. If we want it to do the things intentionally, like we talked about, the way to get us to the goal we want.
I.e. a budget and or just a plan for that dollar and where it's going. Yeah. A plan. Well, so that's why you need this book, y'all. So build your money machine. And like I told you, like Mel has a knack for making it simple, breaking it down, the visuals, the ladder, this kind of stuff is super duper helpful and straightforward. So, where do we want people go, Mel, to buy a copy of the book and connect up with you?
Go to yourmoneymachinebook.com. And you'll see the links there to different booksellers in the UK, in Australia, Canada, US. You can buy the book, come back, give us the receipt, and I'll give you some other wealth resources and gifts to help accelerate your path to financial freedom, and some additional trainings around that and resources. So yeah, that's where they do it.
I love it. Yourmoneymachinebook.com. Mel is also a Brand Builders Group client. So even if you don't want to buy the book, you should go to yourmoneymachinebook.com to see how he's got his page structured. And he's giving away some killer incentives for pre-ordering his book, which are super duper valuable. And Mel, I'm so grateful for you, man. I'm grateful for your friendship and just for your partnership and letting us speak a little bit into your life and you speaking into ours today. Brother, we're praying for you and your family and all the clients you help, and we just wish you all the best.
I appreciate you, my friend. It has been a journey, and it's good to have you on the journey with me, bro.